All right, for everyone joining us today, let's just take another minute and get everyone settled, and then we'll get started. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Before I hand this over to Art and our dental team today, we do have just a few announcements for you. All of our phone lines have been muted, so if you do have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A box located on your menu bar, or you can use the chat feature. We'll do our best to answer all of your questions during the presentation, and if we cannot answer them, we will answer them offline after the webinar. This broadcast is not worth a CPE credit today, and we will send out the recording link and the handouts to this presentation a few days after. So look for this follow-up email early next week with all of the information. So we're going to turn it over now to Art and get started. Go ahead, Art.
Thank you, Amy, and hello, everyone. Happy Friday. We've changed our Eide Bailly HMWC webinars from Tuesdays to Friday because of some great news is that many of you are back to work, and that's great news, and we're very happy about that. So I want to introduce our panel today. My name is Art Wiederman. I'm a dental-specific CPA. I'm a partner at HMWC CPAs and Business Advisors in Tustin, California. I've been a dental CPA for just short of 36 years. Today we have Shane Pickett, who's a senior manager at Eide Bailly. Shane, welcome for the first time I think you're on here. Shane works primarily with dental offices, I believe in Utah, right?
In Utah, correct.
Okay. Is Dan on the line with us today or no?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, hey, Dan, I didn't see you. So hey, Dan Water from Ready Capital. Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing good. Dan has been our lifeline as far as banking and everything. And you got, what, about 130 billion left to hand out, right?
We do, yeah.
Well, we'll talk about that. We have Megan Mortimer, who Megan is the congressional lobbyist for the American Dental Association, and Megan and I have been working very closely together and disseminating information to dentists all over the country. How you doing, Megan?
I'm doing good. I'm happy it's Friday for sure.
Absolutely. And we have a special guest today, my dear friend, our client, and dental coach extraordinaire, Dr. Jeanette Kern. You'll get to meet Jeanette. Well, you get to meet her right now. Hi, Jeanette. How you doing?
Hello. Thank you so much for this opportunity to help our dentists.
So Dr. Kern practiced dentistry, and I'll tell you a little bit more about her in the second half of the webinar, in beautiful Monterey, California, one of those beautiful places on the planet, for many, many years. And Jeanette is now a dental success coach with the Profitable Dental Academy. And we're going to talk to Jeanette in the second part of the show today about what she is doing to help her clients reopen offices. And one of the things we're doing in these webinars, folks, is to bring you people that can give you great information for helping you to be successful. And Jeanette is certainly in that realm. So Amy, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And so what are we going to talk about today? So we have a new law. As of, it was signed by President Trump about an hour or two ago, I think I saw. So the president signed it. It was passed on Wednesday by the Senate. And we're going to talk about, what the law is, what happens next. We're going to kind of give you a little update on your taxes, because unfortunately we don't get to skip the year 2020 or 2019 on taxes. So Shane will talk to you a little bit about that. And then Dr. Kern and I will have a discussion about returning to your practice. But this new law is so amazing that this happened. It just reminded me, the first thing that came to mind was this. And Amy, go ahead and put the video up real quick. This is what it was like. And she's going to put up a video here in a second. Hopefully it'll work. That is one of my favorite videos of all time. That was, for those of you who might be a little too young to remember it, was Al Michaels' call
Olympics.
of the Olympics, the 1980 Olympics, when the United States defeated the Soviet Union in the semifinal game, and his maybe the most famous call in American sports history. Do you believe in miracles? Well, that's kind of what Megan and I were thinking about, is that this was a miracle that they got this thing right. So if you didn't like the humor, blame me for it, because it was my idea. What can I tell you? So let's go ahead and move on to the new law. So going back to the beginning, which seems like forever. Let's go to the next slide, Amy. So on March 27th, we passed the CARES Act, $2.2 trillion of stimulus that created the Paycheck Protection Program, $349 billion to be paid to small businesses, which in essence, if you followed the rules and you put people back on payroll for 8 weeks, it became a grant. It was forgiven. You didn't have to pay it back. And we've been talking to all of you for 10 weeks now about how to do that. And if you want forgiveness, take people off of unemployment, even though they were making more money on unemployment. We've been through all of this with all of you guys, and that is true. And that's what they wanted you to do. But what happened was that the government, when they set this law up, they believed that this was going to be an 8-week problem, that in 8 weeks that we were going to be back to normal. Everything was going to be back. Government was going to be back. The economy was going to be back. We could reopen and we could go back to restaurants and there'd be 90,000 people in a football stadium. Well, guys, it didn't really work out that way, did it? Not quite. So as small business and as people like Megan and Michael Graham from the American Dental Association were talking to Congress, they were basically saying, folks, if you make us spend this money that you're giving us in 8 weeks, most of our businesses are either not open because the government said we can't be open, or they're open to a very minimal amount. Like for dentists, they were only open for emergencies. Well, Congress heard that and they started working on some bills. And about 10 days ago, I think it was, Megan, they passed, the House of Representatives passed the Payroll Protection Flexibility Act. And it was passed by 417 to 1. And then the Senate had a bill, and the Senate had a bill that was different. But then on Monday of this week, Megan emails me and says, Art, guess what? The Senate, we think, is going to pass the House bill as is, right? That's what you told me. Well, that's pretty much what happened. We did have Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, who on Wednesday morning kind of said, well, wait a minute, not really sure, not feeling the love. But I guess his buddies got behind him and he gave in and they passed it.
He also got a lot of pressure from outside groups and Wisconsin groups that I think put a lot of pressure on his office, not limited to us. I mean, I'm sure a lot of the small business associations were hammering his office. So he got what he wanted in terms of a response, but we also pushed really hard on Wednesday to make sure our voices were heard. And he's usually a really great friend of dentistry. I do want to say Senator Johnson usually is. So he heard our concerns and thankfully got it done.
I think, Megan, what I read was that his biggest concern was about the monitoring of the program.
Yeah, I think he was also hearing, so, because in the beginning, ADA was hearing this as well, right? Dentists were telling me that they had friends in other industries, engineering firms that weren't experiencing any sort of economic downturn, and yet were still able to receive PPP loans because there wasn't a lot of, mandated documentation to show that you had been suffering. So we get that perspective, but also let's not let perfect be the enemy of the good. And I think you can probably do that through rules and not necessarily through congressional action if you want additional oversight.
And I think they told Senator Johnson that he will get some oversight in the next CARES 2.0, the HERO, whatever that's going to be. I think that's what I read, that
he was probably given something. I don't know if it's the oversight or some other aspect of CARES 2.0 that he wants, but that's how they do it. They get us right on the edge. They claim they're going to blow it all up, and then leadership has to be like, all right, what do you want next? And then we'll move on. So we'll see.
I believe they call that horse trading sometimes, right?
Brinkmanship.
Brinkmanship. I like that word, Megan, brinkmanship. So let's go through this new law because it does change everything. So as kind of a background, when we started this conversation, our comments to all of you were this: if your number one objective was full forgiveness of this loan, what you had to do was from day one, from the day you got this money, was to put all of your employees back on full payroll the way it was before the pandemic and pay them for 8 weeks. And if you did that, and if you hired, and if they on June 30th were making the same amount of money, and you had the same number of people as you had on February 15th, you would get full forgiveness. Well, what this turned into, folks, as we saw what was happening with the economy and 40 million people going out on unemployment, was that it wasn't going to be done in 8 weeks. And so what happened is that, groups like the American Dental Association, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, the restaurant industry was a big push on this, was they said, we need more time. This economy is not going, small business is not going to get back to normal in 8 weeks. So if you make us spend this money in 8 weeks, when many of our businesses are not even open yet, we're up the creek without a paddle. And they heard. So what this law does is this expands the covered period. And this is the period that you need to spend this money in, from 8 weeks to 24 weeks, or until the end of 2020, whichever comes first. So for example, if you got your money on the 1st of May, your covered period did end at around June 25th. Well, now your covered period is going to go to sometime in October. So what that means is you have more time to bring your team members back, to get your business back going. Restaurants are going to have more time to get to where, are they going to be at 50% capacity forever? I hope not, but they're going to need time. Other businesses are going to need time to come back. People are slowly going to start going to malls, are going to go to small businesses. So that's why they did this. So it's 24 weeks, which is the equivalent of 6 months to spend this money. And as you're going to see, this bill is going to make the forgiveness almost a moot point. Not quite moot, Megan, but it's going to make it a lot easier, isn't it?
Yeah, and that was the whole intent, because they wanted this to be a grant. If, we have a bunch of people, although the loan terms are great, even if, we have a bunch of people that signed up for this program under the guise that they would be forgiven if they did the right thing. And, Congress wanted to make that an assurance.
Now, I do there were a couple of things that Megan and I were talking about before we went live with everybody that I did not put into the slides. Number one, you still have to apply for a PPP loan by June 30th. Now, Dan, you show us your briefcases with all the money that you've got there, right?
Yeah.
Hold them up. Come on, let's see the money.
It's somewhere. It's in a secure location.
Hermetically sealed. That's right. $130 billion is left in this program, is my understanding.
Yeah, so, I remember a few weeks ago, or I guess it's been longer, when they had the second round hit, we all thought it'd be gone in days, but because of the rules they put around it, it's really made this stuff last longer, which is great. But yeah, there's quite a bit left over. So if you haven't applied yet for a PPP loan, there's still time.
Have you seen an uptick in requests to you guys in the last couple of days, or is the news just not filtered down to the rank and file, you think, yet?
You know what? I don't think the news is really filtered down. If you look at typical news sites, it's not really front page news. I think I try to tell as many people as I can when I'm in conversations with them day to day with these loans about these new changes. But yeah, I don't think it's filtered through quite yet.
Okay.
Art, I had a handful of clients that didn't want to jump through all the hoops of the PPP program. They felt like they could get through and get by. And so they just didn't apply because they didn't want to have to deal with all the forgiveness and possibly have a loan. And I'm going back to them now saying, okay, there's still money left. They're trying to make it forgivable. Let's go get the, grant money, the free money. Let's do it. So hopefully there'll be more coming, Dan.
Well, and with the 5-year term change too, it really makes sense to apply, even if you think you might not get forgiveness. 1% loan on a 5-year term, that's pretty dang good.
Yeah, that's I think another way in which they're trying to encourage borrowers to come back and reevaluate whether or not it's a good choice for them. So,
yeah. And as you guys are going to see, with the law change, the amount of money you're spending on payroll is going to be moot. We'll get to that. I've got a slide on that. So let's get through some of these other provisions. So 8 weeks to 24 weeks. You now have 24 weeks to spend this money. We've told you that you needed to spend 75% of this money on payroll costs, and payroll costs are payroll to your team, up to $15,385 for yourself, and we'll talk about that in a second. Retirement plan contributions, health insurance, and your state payroll taxes. They have reduced that to 60%, but they made a very interesting caveat with the 60%. They basically said that if you do not, before with the 75%, if you only spent 70% of the money, you got a small reduction in your forgiveness. Now it's our understanding that if you don't get to 60%, you get zero forgiveness. That's our understanding, Megan. Am I getting that right?
that's what you reported to me, and I know that's what Senator Rubio has said, but I need to see confirmation from, Treasury before I make that it is not in the bill. But as you know, Treasury has decided to make some decisions of things that were not in the bill. So we'll see. I would like to see what Treasury has to say.
Yeah, we are erring on the side of caution, folks. But as you're going to see for the dental profession, it's a non-issue. I'm going to show you why. So this 75% is now 60%. It's not in HR 7010, but it is being talked about. Tony Nitti from Forbes magazine put his article out. He talks about it. That was another interesting thing, Megan, in Tony Nitti. And for those of you who don't know Tony is a writer for Forbes, and he's a CPA. I think he might be a tax attorney, but he takes very technical tax topics and breaks them down and makes them really simple and actually puts some humor to it. So I love reading the guy's stuff. He made a comment, Megan, in his article that SBA has 30 frequently asked questions about forgiveness kind of sitting, and they haven't put them out because they knew these law changes were coming.
Of course. I mean, you and I both knew that was probably the case. We were waiting for guide. They were overdue for 3 weeks with the piddling guidance they did give us. And then, you and I have continued to wait for additional. So I'm sure they waited because they knew this was, especially if Rubio and Mnuchin have been talking so closely.
Yeah, that's true. So 60% now instead of 75. As we were chatting a minute ago, what Dan was talking about, this will expand the payback of the new non-forgivable loan. So if you don't have it all forgiven, if you don't use it all and you keep some of it as working capital and you don't pay it back, the rule was that you had to pay it back over 2 years at 1%. Well, they've expanded that for 5 years, but understand the 5 years is only for new loans after the date of enactment. So if you call Dan next week, Shane, you were saying your clients are now maybe going to go apply. Their promissory notes are going to be 5 years because it's after enactment. But if we have, Dan, people that you've made, I mean, how many loans did you guys process? Thousands?
We approved 35,000 loans.
That's thousands. So 35,000 loans. So for all of those folks, what's going to happen is they're going to have to go back to the bank and ask the bank to change the term from 2 to 5 years. And I believe that there's no obligation that the bank has to do that. They don't have to.
It's a negotiation between the lender and the borrower.
Right. But if we do this right, folks, I think it's a non-issue, but that's where it is. So if you choose to keep this money as working capital, then that's going to take you from 2 years to 5 years that you can pay it back. But again, remember, if you have an existing loan before the date of enactment, you have to actually call your bank. And don't forget, folks, on the forgiveness part, we'll get to this in a minute. The bank is not going to call you. Dan, you're not going to be making 35,000 phone calls to say, hey, Dr. Smith, Dr. Pickett, you need to get your forgiveness in. That's not happening, right?
No, that's not happening.
Come on, man. Don't you have time to do that? Okay, so the next thing is the payroll tax deferment for businesses. Shane, maybe chime in a little bit on this. They changed that rule?
Yeah, with the payroll taxes. So before it was you couldn't do the PPP and do payroll tax deferment. They've changed that now. We've talked to a lot of our dentists and said it's probably not worth it to defer payroll taxes. It's not, you forget about stuff. And I just was in a seminar, and they actually said, if I tell a doc he doesn't have to pay $35,000 and I come to him a year later and tell him he's got to pay half of it, he's going to show me the nice boat he bought with that. So
Yep. That's great.
It's probably a good idea for our dental practices, unless you're one of the larger practices, to not necessarily dip into this. But if it is something you want to do, I know we can work with your payroll companies to make it happen. But what it is it's going to allow you to defer those payroll taxes. And I believe it's 50% has to be paid at the end of the next year there, and then 50%. I think it's right there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it's only the employer's Social Security part. So if you have
correct
$500,000 payroll, 6.2% of that is a little over $30,000. So, and the other thing is you got to remember to pay it. And like Shane, like you're saying, Shane, hey doc, in 30 days you got to come with 15,000. What? Are you kidding me? Are you making this up? No. There you go.
They're not going to look pleasantly on me at that point.
They are not. Well, it's all our. I mean, I wear a sign around my neck that says it's Art's fault unless otherwise indicated. That's just how it is. But that's the way it goes. So the next deal, which is huge, is, remember we talked about there's 3 ways you can lose forgiveness under the PPP. One is to not pay 75%, which is now 60%. And the other 2 were basically that you needed to have the same number of full-time equivalent employees and restore employees' salaries or hourly wages to what they were on June 30th. Okay, well, that's not happening in this economy. The restaurants are not going to bring everybody back by June 30th. Many of the dental offices may not bring them back until June 30th. They have expanded that to December 31, 2020. So we are going to have to watch how this works. But as you'll see, the full-time equivalent situation has also been changed. So you have until the end of the year to bring everybody back to the same salary or hourly wage. We desperately need SBA guidance. We need them to take those 30 questions and let us know. I'm sure they're going to change, and we hope they're going to do it. So next slide, please, Amy. Okay. So for those of you who are sitting there and saying, you know what, Art, Shane, Megan, you've been telling us to follow the rules and pay everybody and take them off unemployment. And for those of you who did that, you now have additional time to make plans. We have actually, Megan and the ADA have actually gone to Congress and asked them to create some sort of a tax credit. Or as I said on the slide here, offer them a sausage and cheese pizza or something that's still under consideration. We hope they'll do something to reward the people that did what the government asked them to do. Some of you might be thinking, if you waited to either get the loan or spend the money, maybe you guessed right. Shane, in your business and my business, guessing is not a good thing when we're giving clients advice, right?
Correct. We do it all the time, though.
Well, yeah. All tax returns are quoted approximately. Is that what we say, right?
Yes.
Okay. We're kidding, by the way, folks. But anyway, the point is, we had to tell you what the law said and give you choices. Well, now those of you who've spent your money, are you going to take your employees and put them back on unemployment if your office isn't open? I doubt it. I probably don't think so. But you can certainly choose to do whatever you like. Just what this is really going to do is this is going to give you the opportunity to run your business the best way you can run your business. But I want to walk you through this 60% test and show you why it's going to be a non-issue. And it's a mathematical calculation. So when we did this, when we told you guys to apply for this, you calculated 2.5 times payroll costs. Okay, and that's what the loan was based on. So let's take an example. We got a PPP loan of $100,000, and that was based on your monthly payroll of $35,000, which if you take that times 2.5 times is $87,500. Add to that a little more that you put in for your retirement plan contribution, for your health insurance, and for state taxes. And it came to $100,000. And we needed you to spend 75% of that money in 8 weeks. Great. Okay, you got your loan back on May 1, and you put your team back on payroll and opened your office on June 1, which, Jeanette, you've seen offices that are starting to open. June 1 is a realistic day. Megan, a lot of people are opening,
Absolutely.
right? Okay, so now I've got this money. I got it on May 1st. On June 1st, I have basically 5 months left until October, 4.5 months till October 16th to spend this money. Well, if you bring your team back, and most offices are bringing most all of their team back, if you bring your whole team back, you're going to spend by October 16th, not 100,000, but you're going to spend 175,000 just in payroll. Okay, just in payroll. So because of the mathematical fact that you got this money and it was 2.5 times monthly payroll, and now you've got basically 6 months to spend it with 24 weeks, maybe a little less, 5.5 months to spend it. It's a math problem. So the fact is that if you bring your team back and you put most all of them back on payroll, you're going to get to, and remember, you don't have to spend 100% on payroll. You only have to spend 60%. So Megan, it's a math problem. Most dental offices that are opening, that are starting to see patients, they're going to meet the 60% test.
For sure. We're not hearing very many stories about people who aren't going to be able to hit that payroll, especially now with the 24 weeks. It just seems nearly impossible not to hit it.
Right. So that even, and here's the other thing that's interesting. And I just had a conversation with a doctor whose corporation is a partner in a partnership. So this is interesting, right? So right now, you and I have talked about the fact that the maximum that you can take into account for forgiveness is $15,385. But if you look at Tony's article, you listen to the video we saw, it basically states it's during the covered period. So I would say they could triple that 15,385. You and I don't think so, but it's possible. We'll have to see. I wouldn't bank on it.
That's not the intent. The intent is to bring back employees and pay them. So to pay yourself 3 times what you were first allowed to be paid, maybe that you could read the law that way, but I would imagine Treasury interprets it the way that you and I concluded.
Right, but so my doctor, I told him this morning, I said exactly what you said. That's not the intent. But if they do that, and again, this is the wild, wild west, or in your case, the wild, wild east in Washington, D.C. If they do that, he got $38,000 for his PPP loan. He's going to be able to spend all of it. He's going to have to give $20,000 of it back. We'll just have to see what happens. But I think that the 15 is the intent of the law, and I do agree with you, Megan. So absolutely.
Perhaps, Art, perhaps they'll do it for sole props.
Yeah, maybe.
And maybe not, people who have employees. Maybe for sole props, they might make that distinction.
You know what? That's why you and I have a job, because we get to continue to see what these people are doing. Let's go to the next slide. And I just put this up here. Senator Rubio from Market Watch on Monday, he basically said it's better than not doing anything. So they had to get something done because the 8-week period is coming up in the next week or two. They had to do something. But he said, and again, this is not in the law, people need to know that the way Treasury has told us they're going to interpret the bill, if you don't spend 60% of your money on payroll, 59.9, you'll get zero forgiveness. Again, as Megan was saying very aptly, not in the bill. We'll see what they come up with. So basically they needed to do something. The 60% test, we really believe, is a moot point now. So let's go to the next slide. So, and Shane, maybe chime in on this. Now you can do what you need to do with this money to bring the necessary people back into your business, right?
Yeah, I think it's, it was originally kind of put out there to get open back up like we've been talking about. And as we've been opening back, we've just seen different stages, and to get that 8 weeks has been hard for a lot of people to spend their money. So now it just opens up everything that we can do We can get people back on as needs arise, as you start to get busier and busier, that Jeanette's going to talk about. And it just really allows us some freedom to do whatever we need to do at this point.
Jeanette, are you seeing a lot of your offices bringing most of their team back once they open, or they do
Yes,
it
it's usually
gradually?
the first wave seems to be the restorative clinical team, and then the second wave is bringing on the hygiene teams. So a lot of that has been because we needed some of the PPE. But I have some questions. Are there a lot of rules in here about being the same employee that comes back?
Does not have to be the same employee, just the same number. And even, and Art's going to get into it, but even the same number is going to be a moot point for a number of dental practices as well as a result of this change in law. But no, doesn't have to be the same employee.
Great.
So-
There's going to be a little bit of shuffling around, I think. There's some culling of the herd, as they say, and wondering how we're going to, I think by the time December comes, we'll be back full.
Well, we're hoping.
We're hoping.
So at the end of the day, the advice is, folks, use this money to make the best business decisions that you need to. In other words, if this is your only source of liquidity, then you need to preserve it and use it as best as to allow your business to continue to operate. If you have a $500,000 line of credit, just do what's best for your business. The forgiveness part, as you're seeing, is going to be a lot easier. Let's go to the next slide, Amy, please. So basically, if you have a loan that is not 100% forgiven, it was that you start paying it back 6 months after your period was over. Now it's when the bank determines the forgiveness, and as you're going to find out, it's going to be for a while. So you now, under this new law, have 10 months from the end of your covered period. So think about it this way, folks. In my example before, if you get the money on May 1st, your covered period after 24 weeks is over October 16th, and then you have until August 16th of 2021 to apply for forgiveness. So you have 10 months. If you don't apply by the time you get to 10 months, then you will have an automatic 5 or 2 year, if you negotiate, loan at 1%. So you need to put on your calendar to make sure that you apply. You have to go to the bank and apply, just like with Social Security. If you don't apply, they're not going to send it to you. So there's no hurry to do this. There may be some people who might want to do this. For example, if you're selling your dental practice, we're still investigating this. This is going to be very interesting. If you're selling your dental practice, or you're thinking about doing it in the next year, and you're not going to apply for forgiveness until the middle of next year, that is going to, and that's a good question, Dan, is this going to appear as a lien on a dentist's credit report, this PPP loan?
If it turns out, if they don't get forgiveness?
Say again, please.
If they don't get forgiveness, you mean?
Right. But I mean, just when this loan goes on the books of the bank, does this get reported to the credit reporting agencies? If I pull a credit report 3 months from now, will there be a loan on there for?
No, not on a personal credit report. It won't be on there. It would be on any lien searches.
It would be.
You might be able to see them in a UCC lien search. Maybe not UCC lien, but any lien searches that a bank might pull, but not in a typical credit report. It won't report to that.
Okay, but it would be a lien search.
I would like to say, Art, though, that Treasury, I mean, per the law, Treasury is allowed to publicly make available the lists of names of businesses that have applied and received or have received PPP loans. And there's a big push for that. So even if it's not on the credit report, there'll probably be an easily searchable database to see if a business has received a PPP loan.
And I do know some banks that are already searching and looking into whether you've gotten one or not. In fact, our bank, for even 7A loans, that's one of the questions we ask now is, did you apply and receive a PPP loan?
So the concern is, if you go to sell your practice, the bank is going to pay off whatever shows up on the lien search, and they're going to say, wait a minute, I'm not going to have to pay off this $100,000. I'm going to have it forgiven, but you're not going to apply till next year. So that's going to be an interesting situation, is you're going to need to check with your broker, your CPA on all this stuff. Just if you're selling your practice in the next year, I just want to bring this up. Let's go to the next subject.
Art, I wanted to bring up one other thing on the no hurry to apply for forgiveness. I don't think I want to be the first person that applies for forgiveness. I
Exactly.
don't want to be the last, but I don't want to be the first. I'd like this to get kind of worked out as we go along and see. And Dan, I don't know, maybe you can help me on this one. We had a question come in about with the 8 and the 24 weeks, do you have to choose, or once your 8 weeks is up, can you start, maybe it's been 10 or 15 weeks and you can apply? How does that work, Dan, or maybe even Megan?
You have
Yeah,
to
I
choose.
believe after the 8 weeks, right, Megan, that you can start applying or wait until later on.
Well, you got this question in the chat. You can choose to still keep the 8-week period. Like you can choose either 8 or 24. It's not, you don't have to keep this for 24 weeks. And
it could be
the
12,
only thing
13 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to caveat that with, though, don't use the existing loan forgiveness application to start putting everything together because it's going to change.
It's going to
No,
change.
will
I've been
be a
telling
new
people
one.
that for weeks.
So but you can, if you were chosen, someone who's gotten this money and has decided to do it and their 8 weeks is up and they're expended, they've done all the expenses correctly. Yeah, I mean, you can apply for forgiveness when you feel like it based on the 8 weeks. You don't have to wait till 24.
I will say though that, this goes along with our bank and also other banks. I think there's a lot of banks are still trying to figure out how they want to handle these forgiveness requests. So you may hit the end of that 8 weeks and you might contact your bank and they might say, well, we're not quite sure how we're going to handle these yet.
Do they know when this forgiveness application is going to come out, or have we not heard anything about that?
If I knew that, Shane, I would be the most popular person in the nation.
You'd get more than a sausage and cheese pizza.
Yeah, well, you have to add mushrooms onto that. Okay, let's go because I want to get to Jeanette. She's got a lot of great information. So here's another rule that's part of this new bill. It says if you cannot hire back, so this is for the reduction in forgiveness for full-time equivalent employees. If you can't hire back your employees who worked for you on February 15th, they call you up, you call them and say, hey, Susie, we're coming back to work, and she's gonna say, I'm going to leave dentistry. I'm not coming back to work. Okay. So Susie leaves and terminates. And you can't find anybody else who can do her job. Hygienist, front, back office. Or, and this is the big one, if you can document an inability to return to the same level of business activity as you were at on February 20th, because you have to comply with the requirements from the Secretary of Health and Human Services, the CDC, OSHA, SpongeBob, whatever government agencies that you've got here, if you can't return to the same level of business activity between March 1 and December 31, relating to the fact that you had to maintain standards of sanitation, social distancing, or any other worker or customer safety requirement related to COVID-19, forget about the FTE requirement for forgiveness, you're out. I don't think, Megan, we've talked about this, that there's any dental practice in America that is not going to be able to meet this rule. I cannot, in my wildest imagination, figure that out.
You were forced to shut down and you had, maybe 2 months of complete lost revenue. I can't, if they can recover that quickly and come up to the same revenues there's no way. There's no way, no dental office.
So what we're telling you folks is the 60 or 75% of payroll cost, we got it covered. We're going to meet it. The full-time equivalent employees, depending on, let's go to the next slide because we talked about this a little more, Amy. So my comment was, I can't wait to see what Treasury comes up with on this one. What's their definition going to be for this? Because of the additional PPE, the sanitary changes, patients taking more time in hygiene. Jeanette, every single doctor and every single hygienist is going to have to listen to every single patient tell their COVID-19 story, right?
Yes.
And you can't say, well, wait a minute, my coach, Dr. Kern, said I'm not making as much money because I can't see as much people. So could you stop talking? How does that work?
Not too well.
Not too well. So with all this stuff and not being able to work out of 3 or 4 rooms at the same time because of social distancing, I mean, there's no way that your business is not going to be suffering from that. Or what about the fact that your state, county, or city requires you to be closed for 8 to 10 weeks? Treasury will give us some rules. So the only reduction in forgiveness that is left is that you have to bring people. Here's what the third rule is. So we got the 60% rule covered. We got the FTEs more than likely covered. And we got till December 31 to figure that one out. So the only thing left is this law said that as long as you do not reduce people's salaries by more than 25% on an annualized basis for the covered period, as compared to what they made in the first quarter of 2020, then you're fine. And even if you did, as long as you put everybody back on the same salary or hourly wage as that they were on before the pandemic, by, at that point, it was June 30th, it's now December 31st. As long as you do that, then you meet that test. So basically, Megan, I think the only test we have left that we have to worry about is this one, right? For reduction of forgiveness?
Yeah.
That's the way I see it. I think that's the way we all see it. So here's what this means. Let's go to the next slide. So what happens next? So pay your employees based on what your business needs are. Let's make sure that 60% of the loan is spent in the 24-week period. I mean, I don't know, maybe there's a state out there that's not going to open till November. I don't think there is one. They're all going to open sometime soon. Make sure the 24-week period, you pay your employees on an annualized basis, the same you paid them in the first quarter, or that you at least bring them back to what their hourly wage was. We don't have to really worry about rent, utilities, and interest anymore, right? I don't think. If you're not going to have the same number of full-time employees by December 31 due to business activity, we'll need to lean on the new law regarding the reduction. And we need guidance, and we need a new forgiveness form. So folks, go back there. We're going to talk for in a minute about what we need to get you doing, but they have made this better. Is it perfect? No, but it's better. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. And then one more, and then I'm going to turn this over to Shane. Sorry, we have to talk about taxes, Shane. So what was it Steve Martin said? 2 famous words when the IRS comes knocking. I forgot to pay my taxes. Does that work?
Yes. I think it does work, actually. And
I got to come work in your office and do taxes in your office. I like the way
we guess and we forget a lot. So, but I think for clients, I've been telling my clients, put it on your calendar, put it on your smartphone. Don't forget July 15th is a new date. Your individual income tax returns are due. And, as we've been telling our clients, be kind to your CPA. But however, I think nothing is more patriotic than me sitting in my office on July 4th, looking out and seeing the fireworks in the distance and preparing tax returns for our government. I think that's very patriotic.
I do think that's patriotic, Shane. I think you should get a cheese and a mushroom and sausage pizza. I think you should get 2 pizzas.
Yeah. So we've been asking clients, get your stuff in as soon as possible, July 15th. You can file extensions, which would put the due date back to October 15th for your individual returns and your C Corp returns as well, which is down there below. You can still extend those. Your business returns, those were due March 15th and kind of pre-COVID, believe it or not, for a lot of us. So March 15th, those were already extended and are still due September 15th. The other thing that's important is if you owe money. So I have filed tax returns for clients and said, hold off on paying until July 15th, just because, like we mentioned in the other piece, cash flow is king, and hold on to your cash as long as you can. We don't know how long this will last, but hold on to that cash. So on July 15th, you must make your payment for your taxes that were due. Oh, and by the way, also due July 15th is your first quarter and your second quarterly estimated tax payments for those of us that pay estimated quarterly tax payments. So you've got potentially 3 big checks to write, or maybe hopefully just 2, which is, first quarter and second quarter. The important thing to remember on those quarterly payments, go back to your tax advisor and let them know that you haven't been making as much as you did last year. So there's no reason for you to make the same amount of quarterly payment based off your 2019 tax filings. That's a big thing for us, is we are doing projections to help our clients pay a more realistic tax for 2020 so far.
And here's another problem we've got, which is the fact that the government has, that the Treasury has said, notice 2020-32, that the amount of money that's forgiven is not a tax deduction. Now, Megan and I have been talking on these webinars that is not very popular in Washington. and we believe that this will be overturned. But then, Megan, you believe that things are going to happen all kinds of times, and they don't happen.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if now Treasury is going to hang their hat and be like, look, we didn't stand in the way of these loan forgiveness changes, so we're going to stick with you not being able to deduct it on your taxes, which would be unfortunate, but we're still pushing.
Well,
We're still pushing.
And Shane, that makes it really difficult, because if a doctor got a $150,000 PPP loan, do they get it? What if they apply for forgiveness in 2021 and then you file their 2020 return?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Please, folks, be kind to your CPAs. We are trying real hard, and to put a bow on all this, folks, you are with the best CPA firms as far as I'm concerned. Period. Eide Bailly. We are merging our firm with Eide Bailly in a little over a month. I am so excited about that. They have resources that are just beyond my comprehension, and everybody I've met there is fantastic. So for you Eide Bailly clients that are listening or listening on demand on this thing, lean on Shane, lean on Scott Haberman, lean on all the folks over there. For us at HMWC in Southern California, again, a great shout out to Pam Chamberlain, Don Watson, Sam Williams, and our entire dental team. They're fantastic. I can't say enough nice things about them. And we're here to help you. We've answered hundreds and hundreds of questions about this. And Pam and Don and Sam are working on getting tax returns done. I've been kind of the anointed one on the PPP program, and that's fine. But we're here to help you. Okay.
And make no mistake, Art, it goes both ways. We are happy that you guys are joining us.
Well, we're very excited. I mean, I was just absolutely, as I'm learning the more resources that your firm has, and just every single person I'm talking to, just really nice people. So I'm excited, and we're looking forward to that'll be on July 20th. And I'm just going to have to figure out how to use my newly configured computer, which is the only thing about all of this that I'm not looking forward to, but I'll figure it out. We have smarter people than I to do that for us. All right, so let's go to Mrs. Dr. Jeanette Kern. So I've known Jeanette Kern for about 25 years. Dr. Kern, I helped her when she bought her practice in Monterey back in
1995.
1995. And she bought her practice, and she built it into a juggernaut of a practice. And she gave me the honor of helping her transition it, which we did about 3 years now.
2018, January.
Right? 2 years, 2.5 years. And Jeanette has become a coach. And Jeanette is part of a Spears Study Club and has always been at the top of the game as far as management and clinical. And she had a great practice, and she's become a wonderful coach. So let's start this conversation. The idea is where Jeanette's going to give you some of her pearls of wisdom as to what she's seeing, what you should be doing, and what is going to get you back to where you were, as close to where you could be on March 15th. So Jeanette, I mean, talk about your experiences during this crisis. I mean, what are you seeing? What are some of the positive takeaways?
There's a lot of positive. I mean, I know right now we're coming out, and we're coming out of our caves. But I want to talk to you about, as a coach, I was almost like a person on the bench. I felt like this shelter in place was one of those situations where the game has been stalled. You're going to go in, but you have to sit here for a while. And that's very frustrating for an athlete. We all know that, who've ever played. But as a coach, it was interesting to look at what was going on with my clients and my colleagues. And I want to say that one of the most important things that's come out of here is how important leadership is. The leadership of ADA, the leadership that our CPAs give us, the leadership of organized dentistry on a smaller level, and just really want to say how much I appreciate people like Dr. Kathy Laughlin and Mr. Rosado at the ADA. The very first week, it was a typhoon that hit us all. And ACT Dental with Kurt Berend and Dental Intel Curtis Marshall created a platform. It was a webinar that had 2,500 dentists on it. We were thirsty for knowledge. And it's very
point.
interesting how there are kind of two types of people. There are the networkers and there are the manager organizers. And we have both in dentistry. And if you think about most of the dentists that you know, they're either rubbing shoulders and knowing people, or they're very organized, very structured, like Coyce or Spear. You know, those are the kind of people. So during this first week, when we were all shell-shocked, and we came together, and that was a positive. The community of dentistry is a loving family. We really, really are. So that was something that I felt and I wanted to talk about, because dentistry has come through a lot. Amy, would you mind advancing the slide? You know, I've been in dentistry since started as an assistant in '75, went to dental hygiene school, became a hygienist in '77, graduated, did that for about 10 years and then went back to dental school. So I've been in this field for a long time, and each of these decades, each of these little storms that we hit changed dentistry. And it always changed dentistry for the better, but at the time it was kind of hell, you know, for both scientifically and financially. So we've gone through it, and the bottom one is probably one of the toughest, because it was both a virus, it was a biological issue, and it's a financial issue. So Amy, go ahead and advance, please. So my philosophy as a coach is keep it simple, Skipper. This is your little ship. Your private practice is your boat, okay? And we've all been tossed around pretty good. But if we just settle down and we think about what is it we need to be and who do we need to be during this crisis, I think we'll be better off. Go ahead, Amy. So I believe that we're three roles as one for a dental practice owner. And leadership and manager are not always comfort zones for most of us as dentists. We like being in the clinician jacket. And this crisis has called us in these 8 weeks to be the leader in our practices and to manage. Manage to me is, it's numbers, it's graphs, it's what I need art for. It's what I need my dashboard dude Kevin for. I need numbers, guys. So that's not my strength. Leadership is our heart and our compassion and our visionary person. And during this crisis, as I said, the leadership that was demonstrated was excellent. And that taught me to be more of a leader with my clients, and I'm asking my clients to be more leaders with their teams. So Art, I know we talked about how important the relationships are. Dentistry is a relationship business.
Yep.
It's also a team sport. I think the team has to be behind you always. So it was so important during this time. And maybe move now to the second and third week of this, where we were starting to get some information finally through ADA and CDC. They were coming out with bits and pieces. We were struggling, but they were trying to give it to us. We needed to make contact with our teams. Very important to gather the groups together, just see how are they doing, just a touch, and to let them know you
They were scared. I mean, Jeanette,
they were scared.
A lot of these people are living paycheck
to paycheck. Yes, they are.
And they are looking and they're saying, okay, I'm hearing this stuff. And what you hear on the news, a lot of people think it's fact, of course. And the fact of the matter is that they didn't know if they wanted to come back. They didn't know, was it going to be safe? Is it going to be, is it something I want to do for the rest of my life? Am I going to have a job? Now, when they're on unemployment, that's fine. but they want, most good dental employees, they want to work, they want to help.
Yes.
And I think, Jeanette, this crisis really tell you what your team is made of? Doesn't it really do that?
Absolutely. And they got to see what you were really made out of. Because those who reached out, even if it was just a happy hour Zoom once a week, just to touch base, not a real structured thing, that meant a lot to those troops. It meant a lot that their boss cared enough about them as a person to pick up the phone or make this, bring together. We missed each other. We weren't in the office. That's our family that we're with day to day. So I think that they needed that. They also, we as dentists were constantly on webinars to try to find out what is going to be the PPE requirement. What are we going to need to spend to get our offices in the correct conditions so that we can be safe, we can bring our employees back with confidence and competence and say, I've got this covered. But they needed to see our vulnerability too. That was okay to say, you know, I don't know. I'm reaching out. This is what webinar I watched, and they shared it. So if you share that you don't have all the answers,
yeah,
they're okay with that. They really are.
I did that as a leader of my CPA firm for 33 years. I would say, you know, I never made a major decision in my business without, you know, Pam and Debbie and Raquel, my three rocks who had all been with me for 30 years. And a lot of times they would just look at me and they would go, Art, no, we're not doing that. And I would go, okay. But you know, I knew that I always made the final decision. But you know, you have to make the final decision. You just need to get the input of your team. And
absolutely, you have to do that. I made the one big error one time, and I hired someone without running it by the team. Big trouble. You know, they came to me. It's her or us. So I had made a quick decision, and that was a mistake. So I never did that again. Whenever I was going to be hiring somebody, the team took them to lunch. The team vetted them. They told me a nay or yay before, because they work with them. They become, you know, in the troop, in the French with them. So they have to have somebody they can count on. So leadership to me was the vision, knowing your vision, knowing how you're going to come back. You have to be strong. And of course, the manager was all of that PPP, idle loan, what do I apply for? How do I do my spreadsheet? Thank you so much, Art, from all of us for your forms. And all of this panel who helped us on a weekly basis negotiate a part of our business that we don't all love. You know, we're clinicians. We're health-oriented people who like people. And so when you start asking us to be managers, it's out of our comfort zone, which is growth. It's okay. We don't have to have all the answers, but we need to know where. Thank you so much for Amy. So this is the weeks before, right? We got 2 weeks, 3 weeks. How many weeks were we out, guys? 8?
8 to 10.
It felt like forever.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a relaxing 8-week vacation. So these are the kind of things that I recommend that people do before they're ready to start. You know, as the boss, decide what you're going to change. What have you done? Most of us have done some soul searching in these 8 weeks about what our priorities are in life. They're our family, they're our health, there are patients and our team that we care about those. But maybe there's some people on your team that really were kind of dogging it, and you've just finally decided that's not the vision you have for your practice. That's why I was asking, do you have to have the same people? Because there's some that are not cut out for this. Dentistry is a calling. It's like those nurses on the front line. We're on the front line. We're a health provider that's right there in their face, in that aerosol. COVID's, you know, right there. You either are willing to do that or you're not. And so, they were scared. Our hygienists were very scared. So once you decide as the leader what changes you're going to make the plan, run it by your team. Definitely run it by their team, because they're going to talk to you about the things like, what about this and what about that? And you come together, make that team, and discuss what you're going to do, what your new normal is going to be.
And some of the best ideas that my dentists have ever gotten, and I ever got at running an accounting firm, is from my team.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
it just, and again, you're the leader. You have the right to veto anything. And as long as you set the parameters, because what you don't want to do is have people making recommendations and you just shoot them all down. You say, guys, here's the rules. The rules are, I'm asking for your input and your advice. At the end of the day, it's my decision. And please don't feel disrespected if I choose to go against your suggestion. But please keep suggesting, because most of your suggestions are probably pretty good, right?
Absolutely. And especially if they were also watching the same webinars you were, the things about aerosol. If they were watching those also, there would be a better discussion. Things like, do I need a jacket for every single patient? Am I going to get an N95 or not? Are we going to have some kind of new air circulation going on? Do we need a sneeze guard? Whoa, we could go over the top. And that's why I think some of the dentists were frustrated, because we weren't getting a straight answer. We were more than willing to buy whatever you said we had to have, but we didn't want to buy $9,000 worth of equipment that wasn't something we were going to need.
Right.
So we wanted to know. Also, I have to say, there's a few things that when your team, you had to take into account. I didn't really like the idea of a sneeze guard. That didn't excite me. To me, that was a barrier. But the front office person felt safer with it. So, okay, I will go with it, and we'll do it, and we'll make it classy. We will do that if she would feel more comfortable. But that wasn't something that's required, is it, Megan? CDC? I don't think so. No. So there were a few things that you had to kind of run by your team, like you say. Again, communication. To me, this is both the leader and the managing. You're managing expectations. You're going to communicate to your patients that when we come back, there's going to be a few changes. We may look a little different. It may be a little bit longer intake. There are going to be some questions we'll be asking. May we ask you those questions?
You always ask permission.
Always ask permission. You don't just, no keyboard, you don't just start there asking questions. It's a violation. And right now, I think we're all so sensitive about our personal space. And we need
everything that's going on. Yeah, I mean, permission. And being empathetic. How important is that, Jeanette?
So important, because see, we in dentistry, we're used to dealing with PPE, and we're used to dealing with organisms. The general population is not. I feel for people who are wearing masks and they have no idea really how to wear masks. I had an elderly patient come in who had a nice, beautiful cloth mask, and underneath was an N95. She was 80 some years old. Fortunately, one of our new normals is to take a pulse oximeter reading. Her pulse oximeter reading was 88. Normal is 98 and 99. So we immediately said, Mrs. X, we understand that you are at high risk, but this mask is making it so you're not breathing and you're not getting enough oxygen. Please consider just wearing your cloth mask. So there are things that they don't know. We can actually help people with this mask issue because we deal with it all the time.
So Jeanette, what are you telling doctors and the team when they're talking to the patients? They call a patient and they're trying to get them scheduled. Hey, we're open now. We can't wait to see you. And they're hemming and they're hawing and they're objecting. And what? Give us some tips on communicating with patients as to making them feel more comfortable and being empathetic.
Well, one of the most important things would have been to communicate before you come in.
Yeah. Yeah.
the week or two, just to connect with them and say, how you doing? Again, it's about the relationship first, because the relationship and trust. They trust their dentist. And if you communicate in your letter that these are some changes for your safety, this is for your benefit, I think that helps to set the stage. So that could have been done maybe 2 weeks out. The phone call is more about, again, orienting the patient to the change. They know there's changes coming up. If they are uncomfortable or they're high risk, you can put them off. That's not a concern. I think that's the most important job for the receptionist or the person, the admin person, is to listen with your heart, not just your ears. If this person does seem very afraid, explain to them what you have implemented in your practice for their safety. You know, Mrs. Jones, we have always done the highest quality of infection control. We in dentistry are used to this. You will see only a few more changes. One of the largest one is the screening, so that we make sure that there is not anyone else in our office at the time that you're here, or we minimize it so that we have enough social distancing. So we let them know what we are doing so that they know what to expect, and we can relieve their anxiety.
Now you're talking about on your bottom bullet point, Jeanette, says prioritize which patients to bring in first. Now, on the one hand, we have to be sensitive, we have to be empathetic, we have to be careful. But on the other hand, we got to do what we can to try from a business standpoint as best as we can to get this thing back to 70, 80, 90, 100%, which we know is going to be hard. How do we bridge that, and what are you telling dentists as far as how they can maybe in the realm of all this try and get their production up?
Well, here's the interesting thing. Dental Intel came out with a very strategic way to try to bring selectively the patients with a higher unscheduled treatment plans or had accepted treatment and were on the schedule, bring those patients in first. But, you know, life happens when you're making plans, and
Right.
that doesn't happen. So as you get into the practice, even though you have tried to do maybe pre-scheduled your larger blocks of time, we have had to add time to our schedule. And I'll talk to you about that first week. But ideally, it would have been about the business and the high production procedures. But we're also getting a lot of emergencies that are coming in. That what happens is now they know we're open and they've been told that they had a problem. Now they're excited to come in and get it done, get it taken care of. So we're having to just go with it. I would say that I have some clients that are in North Carolina and in Maryland, and they've been open since May the 11th. And it's been very interesting because I asked them, okay, what happened the first week? What were your challenges the first, second, third week? When did you finally start producing the numbers that you were used to? It took about the fourth week.
Fourth week.
So I would say as a scout that that's kind of what we're hearing is the first week is really about getting it all back in flow. Go ahead, Amy, and go to the, pardon me?
It's like spring training in baseball.
It's like spring training. It's like you're rusty. You got to come back. You've got to practice those screening protocols. You've got to get that down so that it's just boom, boom, boom. Adapt. Maybe you made it one way in your head. This was going to be the way it was going to go. It wasn't as smooth as you had hoped. Patients are very, very respectful of the request to stay in the car. They're very respectful about waiting until you call them to come up. When they come in, adapting is somebody who's available to take the temperature and do the screening questions again, and who's willing to bring the patient in to do the vitals. So you have to play that by ear. You can run a trial run. The first week is rough. It's a little bumpy to choreograph again what you're going to be doing. So the hardest part of the beginning, the first week, I'm going to tell you honestly, is the PPE. It's coordinating. How do you put on your hat? How do you put on your loops, your N95, and then your face shield? And how do you doff and don all of that effectively and efficiently and thinking about infection control? It's very hot. It's very uncomfortable. It's very disorienting for us dentists who have our loops and our lights and we have another shield. It takes a while to get used to that. If we don't bitch about it, the staff won't bitch about it. It's very important to model the behavior that you want from your team. So it's a little hard, you know, you got to bite your tongue a little bit. It's a little awkward.
It's kind of like you're the parent.
You're the parent.
If you teach the child bad habits, they're going to pick up those bad habits.
That's right. That's right. So it's very important.
My children have no bad habits, just so you know. Okay.
They're all good children. All good children. So doing longer appointments. We actually, again, you have to stagger a little bit. Where do you need the time? Do you need it in the front? Do you need it in the back? There are going to be less patients. Attempt to do more dentistry on the patients that's there. Some practices are charging PPE, CDC compliance fees. That's a whole philosophy that if you're a heavy PPO practice, maybe that's the way to go. If you're a fee for service, I would say that you may want to just raise your fees $5.
I agree with you. And that's what I've been hearing from my higher end practices, is because you know, patients are they're very sensitive right now. They're very delicate right now. And if remember, they don't understand how your business works. So they may be saying, oh, you're just nickel and diming me because you need to make this money back. That's all you're doing. So if you were to add it to the fee, then it's handled. Now with the PPO, that's a whole nother discussion, which we probably don't have time to get into today.
Right, Megan.
But still, I want to talk more, Jeanette, about this whole complete care and how disease starts in the mouth and how fighting COVID-19 by doing that. Let's have that kind of discussion, because that to me is a linchpin here, is if we can help strengthen the immune system, this virus is not going away. It's not. And if we can be a linchpin to help make it harder for that virus to attack our patients' bodies. I mean, talk about that.
Absolutely. We know that in dentistry. And Megan, I don't want to put you on a spot, but have they talked at all of ADA about doing any kind of a large marketing campaign about this oral health being so critical for our immune system to build us up for systemic health?
Yeah, we try already to do that. It just often gets lost in the din with other healthcare providers. I think what we've been most successful with in talking about the importance of dentistry and oral health is the fact that oral cancer is now the fastest growing cancer, and dentists can catch the signs of oral cancer faster than any other profession, because, you know, all other medical specialties, whenever someone comes in with a dental problem, they're like, we don't know anything about the mouth, so please go to your dentist. My friend's a PA, and she's like, people will come in with me and open their mouth and I'll be like, I can, everywhere else I can tell you, but not your mouth. So that's been helpful. We are starting, our big push right now is just making patients feel assured that the dental office is a safe place. That dentists had already been very proactive with PPE and safety protocols, and they were the first ones to shout to CDC that they needed the new ones. We came up with our own. And so I think that that's our number one. And we, again, it's becoming an easier sell on both Capitol Hill and beyond that oral health is overall health. And we're going to continue with that message along with whatever we're acutely dealing with COVID.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Yeah, I think if we can be more visible, it would be helpful for us, because yes, we are talking about it. And the thing about the shelter in place is, you know what? If it didn't teach you one thing, it should have been, what are your values? What's important to you? And don't procrastinate. Don't procrastinate. With patients coming in, it's been easier to, I mean, the patients are talking themselves into treatment.
That's great.
They really are. This is the people who are coming in on this first wave want to be there. They're not as inclined to put it off. And I think one of the reasons is we're all a little bit anxious about November, December being regular flu season and possibly a reoccurrence of this virus. So they're realizing, you know what, maybe I've got 3 or 4 months to take care of this. I want to take care of it.
Dr. Kern, one of the funniest anecdotes that I've heard recently is because people are having to wear masks, a lot of people are determining that they have halitosis or other sort of bad breath issues. And so there have been some people who have gone to the dentist who haven't been in years because they're like, oh my, is that what my breath smells like? So it's the one almost funny anecdote side effect of having to be mandated to wear masks is people are like, okay, I got to get this taken care of.
Oh, that's fabulous. There's another positive. There's another ray of sunshine. That is great. That is
I love it.
This next point about associates, that's been interesting because, for many years, the business side has talked to us about utilize your facility correctly. Don't both have both associates and the senior associate working at the same hours. You're not utilizing your facility correctly. Utilizing it in staggered shifts or different hours or different days even, where you're able to allow patients to come in at 7 o'clock in the morning or Fridays when you weren't normally there. It gives you social distancing. It gives you less people in the practice, and you're getting probably more production per hour because you have 2 people going.
And
4 people.
Maybe talk about what about doctors who are working 4 days a week? They might be working, 7 to 4, 8 to 5. What about adding an hour at the end of a day? What about adding Saturdays to make up for all the hygiene appointments that we lost? Again, I'm a business person. I'm thinking everything in my life is a math problem. So if I can add, I mentioned this on the webinar last week, is we have a practice in the Southwest. We added 4 hours on Saturday, and I think we added 3 nights during the week for 1 hour, and that brought in, is a big practice, $75,000 a month in revenue, pretty much wiped out their deficit. So maybe we don't do that forever, but maybe we do that, for 3 to 6 months. And if you've got 2 or 3 doctors, we share it among them. And because it's a math problem, and it just depends on your patient demand. And a lot of that goes back to having called all your patients and marketing. You don't want to stop marketing now, right?
Never stop marketing. This is the time when you should be out there. Absolutely. There's a couple things. One, I'm in California, so we have that nice overtime hour that pay. Yeah. So that's is something to consider. Yeah. And yes, that is. Do you realize how many appointments we've had to reschedule in just 2 months? It can be anywhere from 500 to 1,000 to 1,500 patient hours that had to be rescheduled. So you also have to think of, if March, April, and May are out, you've got to go forward 6 months, approximately 6 months. So what are we going to be having happen September, October, November? If you work like a dog to catch up, you're not going to have anything in those months.
But this is where you have to look at your patient flow.
Right. So let's say you had 500. Well, maybe you make up 250. Maybe you don't make up all 500.
Maybe Jeanette and folks, Jeanette and I have worked very, very closely together on clients looking at the metrics programs, Dental Intel, for example, and in these metrics programs, if you're not using them, and I'm not advertising them, I don't sell them, I don't get anything from it, but I can look at it. I was looking at a practice, one of our clients, where he had 1,300 of his 3,300 active patients had not been scheduled for a future appointment. So if we want to get the numbers up, and we've got some pent-up demand in the first 2 or 3 or 4 months, but I've got 1,300 patients that haven't been, that have been in the last 18 months that are not scheduled for a future appointment. Don't I want Jeanette to be getting my team
Bring
calling?
them in.
Yep.
Bring 'em in.
And that's why these metrics programs are so important. You're thinking, oh my God, I'm not making any money now. How can I look at my metrics? You have to look at your metrics.
You have to, you do have to realize, that 2 months were kind of crazy, but
Right, right.
there was something about being selective about the patients. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe CDC actually, Dr. Kumar actually suggested that we try to bring in the patients who have the highest need, number one, but also things like have diabetes, have high heart disease. They're high risk factors, but this might be the time to bring them in, take care of their dental needs so that they're safer for the winter. So that's another way you can prioritize who you bring in.
Right.
Okay. So,
And I will also tell you folks, and I don't have to advertise for Jeanette, if you have ever thought about using a coach, now is the time. Everything has been changing. Get yourself some help, get your team on board. I mean, again, every single day you have an opportunity to get yourself back into the swing of things, and you do have a business to run.
you do. You have to work smarter, not necessarily harder. I say prepare to hustle, but that can be also to strategize. Your morning huddle is so important for who is going to be coming in to see us today. What are their needs? Do they have outstanding treatment? Is it possible for us to do that outstanding treatment today while they're in the practice? You have to be smart about it. Also, if you're talking about the week when the hygienist comes, that's going to be next week for me, but we've already started talking about how do you're not going to be getting up and taking off all of your PPE, grabbing a new jacket, grabbing a new everything, going down the hall to do a quick check, and then coming back and re-garbing again. There's a lot of, that's going to be, there's a need for that to be very flexible and everybody to think outside of the box for a little bit. Can the hygienist be more restorative focused for a bit and follow your prior treatment plan? Look at those teeth, take pictures of those teeth, x-rays of those teeth, send it to you down in room 3 on the monitor. You take a look, you give her back an answer, kind of not teledentistry, but remote diagnosis, I would say. Yes, that does need a crown. Could you please have the patient come back for a crown and an exam at the same time? So thinking through things.
Jeanette, how do we communicate to the patient that it's a benefit to them to do the longer appointments? They don't have to come in an extra time. They don't have to, we don't want to say, well, you don't have to come into this horrible environment. We're not going to say that, obviously, but no. I know. But I'm saying, what do we say to the patient as a benefit for them to do longer appointments, to do more dentistry in the one visit? How do we communicate that?
I think that our intake is already communicating that quite a bit. I think they see that we are set up differently. This is a little bit more like going into a surgical procedure than it is a haircut. This is a little bit more important. And when your dentist diagnoses a more comprehensive treatment plan and presents it to the patient and gives them the choice, most of them are willing to do more once than to come back 5 times. They're not going to be able to leave work either. We're realizing that some people are going to lose insurance. That is going to be a problem. We're going to have to be more flexible with financial arrangements. But most of them don't want to leave work. Right. And they want to just get it done. Get her done, as they say. So we are doing some scheduling from the clinical area. It's a funny thing. For some reason, the diagnosis treatment planning in the clinical area has better acceptance than when they pick up and they go over to the front desk to talk finances. Something happens. The patient forgets the value of what you just communicated. Now, every dentist will tell you this.
Selective
Something
amnesia, I believe they call it.
Yeah, something invisible in amnesia. And so we have the financial person come in to that treatment room and talk financials. Everything's done there. I say touchless, not completely. We still have paper. We still give the patient the treatment plan with paper and their own pen. But things like running the credit card for a prepayment to reserve a large appointment. Apple Pay. We're trying to get away from touch as much as possible. So these are some of the changes that we're making in the week. So you asked me, say it again, Art, your question?
Oh no, I was just about the benefit of longer appointments. What do we tell the patient? What's the benefit of them having a longer appointment?
Well, there's quite a few, really. The main one is there will be less visits. They are able to get a better fit, a better color match. We will be able to take care of anything that is iffy during this time so that we don't have a problem down the road. Getting more accomplished, and I think they understand that now better than they've ever understood it.
We've got about 5 minutes left, Jeanette. So I maybe your top 2 or 3 tips. Like, what are the most important things that doctors who are either just about to start up or have just started up, what are the things that they need to really focus on? And then we can put a bow on this.
Relationship. They're coming to see you. They're excited to see you. They've missed you. Be sensitive because you are, for the first time in 8 weeks, invading their space again. So these people are almost like new patients again. I would treat them with that kind of respect. The other thing is be patient with yourself. Take care of yourself. We have not been doing this for 8 weeks. It's just like riding the bicycle. You're going to go back in and it's going to be back to normal clinically, but there are a few things we're going to change. One of the offices in Maryland is doing fogging. This seems to be something that we may see more of. It's noisy, but the patients are appreciating the disinfecting processes that she's taking. It's noisy. And Megan, I'm sure that's not required, hypochlorous acid, but it's something else that is coming down the track. Another important point, Art, is focus on our businesses. It is a business. Thank goodness for people like you, dental CPAs that can help us negotiate this. Thank you, bank people, for helping us go through this process, and ADA, because we are running a business that happens to be dentistry. And if we remember that, we may be coming up for a rougher bump, so that money that you have, that war chest that you talked about, Art, is so important to keep a little bit in. Don't go buy the boat. Don't go buy the sailing boat. It's not the time to go buy things right now. Go lean. Amy, if you'll change the slide, please. Be nimble and be lean. You know, this is the time to cut costs, cut off things that you don't need that are extra. But remember, don't be indiscriminate.
Yeah,
Make sure you are putting your dollars high to something that's going to give you the return. For me, it would always be my dental CPA versus a regular CPA. No offense, but this time in my life, I would want a dental CPA at the ready.
All right, Shane, we got to send her a pizza. That's what it comes down to. There we go. So I think is there a slide with the phone numbers on them, Amy? Yeah, let's leave that up for a minute. So if you wanted to get a hold of Jeanette, her information is up there, folks. I want to end this on a really positive. First of all, Jeanette, you and I are bound at the hip. You're a dear friend. I adore you. You know that. Thank you for the great information today. Shane, great information from you. Dan, you're solid. I've got a couple more I'm sending over to you. Megan, I would never be able to express my gratitude for what you've done to help me and Alan Schiff and the ADCPA and all the dentists in America. You're a wonderful young woman, and God bless you for everything you and Michael and everybody at the ADA has done. I want to end this on a positive note. The jobs report came out today. We have a 1.5 million people going back on payroll. The economy is starting to come back. Now, we have challenges. Everybody on this panel knows that we have challenges, folks. But the fact of the matter is that people want to get back to some sense of normalcy. Going to the dentist is some sense of normalcy, and they will do that. And here's the other thing that I want to point out is that if you treat people with respect and you care about them, what Jeanette was talking about, what's going to happen? They're going to talk to their 3 neighbors. Oh, you went to the dentist? How'd that go? Is that safe? Oh my God, it's wonderful. It's like going into an operating room. It's kind of cool, but it's safe. And that's what's going to happen is one neighbor is going to tell another, and one sister is going to tell a brother, and one child is going to tell his brother or sister. And that's how it's going to work. So it's so important that, like Jeanette says, you run this like a business. But folks, we have a lot of positive news as far as the economy. We still have 40 million people unemployed. We still have issues. We have problems. There are some problems. There's no doubt. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But we're starting to get back to work. And that's really good news. Anybody else have anything they want to comment on before we call it a day? And remember, my motto is failure is not an option. We are going to be successful. And we have some great stuff coming up. Our next webinar is in, and I'll let comments go. Amy, 2 weeks from today, June 19th, right?
Correct.
So June 19th, we've got some great stuff for you. Anybody have any final comments before we call it an afternoon?
Megan, would you share about the healthcare?
Yeah, so just to piggyback on what Art was saying in terms of people going back to work, dentistry is actually attributed to 10% of the decrease in jobless rates that just occurred. So that's huge. Not only does that mean that dentists are going back to work, but now we just continue to go back to the hill and say, you see how important dentistry is from an employer standpoint. You understand how much the profession contributes to the economic stability of this country and how important it is. Dentists have hired back 244,000 people in just the last jobs report. That's crazy. And we have the lion's share of the recovery for the healthcare sector during this period. So I just want to say that just shows the strength of the profession, the ability of the profession to come back, the desire for patients to see their dentists, and just how important, again, this profession is to the economy overall.
There you go. Shane, thank you so much for your contribution today.
Thanks for having me. Hopefully I can come back.
Nope, we'd love to have you back. Dan, thank you very, very much for everything you've done. We're going to be looking towards forgiveness and conversations as we get to that point.
Yeah. Thanks,
Megan,
Art.
you're wonderful. Thank you so much for everything you've done. Jeanette, let's just help save the world one dentist at a time, and that's what we're gonna do. And for everybody from the wonderful CPA firm of Eide Bailly and HMWC, thank you for joining us today. It's been great to be with you, and we'll see you. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Listen to my podcast, The Art of Dental Finance and Management. We got some great stuff coming up on that. And we'll see you next time. Have a wonderful weekend, and God bless all of you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all so much for attending. Thank you to our presenters, and we'll see you next time.